If we had hard money and we had to pay our bills, we would have to tax everybody for the entitlement system and the war. Taxes would double, maybe. I mean, there would be a huge increase in taxes. The other thing I would like to do is make everybody pay on a monthly basis. Mainly not to annoy them.
To remind them,
yes. To say, this is what you're paying for government. And the government's not allowed to spend any money other than what they take, and they have to get out of this business of financing big government. Because when you do this, when you have this right to print money, you produce big government, and the government does the wrong things, always at the expense of individual liberty.
We have examples, so many examples. India up until just the past couple of decades, China under Mao, the USSR, managed economies. When government gets big and tries to manage an economy, it's always disaster. It never works. Is there ever any example in history of a government being able to print or borrow its way to prosperity?
Only temporarily. And I would say that we're in that stage right now. We're temporarily very wealthy because there's still this trust in the dollar. And I would say 30 years, since it's just pure fiat money, since 71, 30-some years now, that we have, on the short run, benefited by this. But long term, no, I don't think there's any example. The longer it goes, and the more pervasive it is, the more likely it is you're going to end up with runaway inflation like they had in Germany or third world countries in Central America, even Mexico. They've had several new pesos introduced because the peso lost
devaluations of their money.
Devaluation. Yeah. So it ends, but nobody can say, well, you know, the Chinese 1,000 years ago had a paper currency that lasted for 1,000 years and it was a great prosperity with it. No, it doesn't work that way. It always brings poverty and always ends. The paper money will end.
You're a Republican, but everything that you stand for seems to be libertarian. Why is it that you run on a Republican ticket when I don't see much correlation? You know, to be honest with you, I usually don't like or trust politicians, and for some reason there's an exception here, and it's because of your stance and because you're willing to say things that the rest of them aren't. Why are you running under the Republican banner when to me, you're clearly a libertarian, or do you take exception with that? Or are you?
No, I don't shy away from the word libertarian, but I volunteer that I'm a constitutionalist. And what you're saying, if you put the label libertarian on me, that means the founders must have been libertarian. Because even if I had a libertarian belief that contradicted the Constitution, I would want to change the Constitution because I believe the rule of law is important. But the Constitution is pretty libertarian. It gives the government essentially no authority to run our lives or police the world or run the economy. So it's a great document. And to run on a party other than one of the two majors, it's too difficult to win. There are some that have been able to do it as independent, and I have a lot of respect for those, whether they're left or right or libertarian, to run as independent and win. But we have monopoly control of the political system, and the Republican and Democratic Party, although they vie for power, the power struggle is real, but the philosophic struggle is absent. There's no difference between the, I guess I'll qualify that a little bit. There's very little difference between the welfare beliefs of the Republicans and the Democratic Party, the monetary policy, the foreign policy. In the current day, I would say the biggest difference is that Democrats are more easily swayed to raise taxes than the Republicans are. But since they both spend, and spending is a tax, because if you don't tax the people directly, you tax them indirectly through inflation. So it's all a gimmick. They believe in big government. So I run as a Republican because it allows you a chance to win. Because as a third party, you don't get included in debates, and it's harder to raise money. It's hard to get on ballots, and Libertarian Party tries real hard to get their candidate on ballots, and they do. But I tried it one time back in 1988, and I spent most of the money just battling the rules. So you have to be a Ross Perot in order to do that. So if you're wealthy enough and you can find the people who will go out there and overcome the legal system and go to court and get signatures, you can get on the ballot. But for an average
so the system is stacked against
it's stacked against it. And I think somebody could have my views and run as a Democrat. Matter of fact, after this last election, a Democrat that beat a so-called conservative Republican called me, and she was all excited. She says, guess what I did? I used a lot of your supporters up in my district, and I used some of your literature, and I won a seat, which was exciting.
Wow.
That they took these constitutional views, more libertarian views, and were able to use it and win a Democratic seat. And she said, I want to be an ally of yours. And she had never been in office before. So this can happen. So we have a mess and a lot of cards stacked against us, but we're still free enough to participate. The fact that you can still do television programs and you can do homeschooling and private schooling, and even a guy like me can get elected to Congress. So there's still enough freedom left, and we need to use it to go in the opposite direction of recapturing our freedoms, rather than sitting back and saying, well, there's not much we can do. And they say, oh, the media is opposed to us. Well, who's the media? The media is everybody now. All you have to do is get a computer and you're on the website. I mean, my stuff doesn't make the news, but boy, I get a lot of letters around the world. When I give talks on the House floor, I mean, I get a lot of interest.
You said your stuff doesn't make the news. I was watching C-SPAN one time. Congress is grilling Greenspan, and it was all softball questions. And then you step up and you ask a hardball question, and C-SPAN immediately cuts away to some silly commentary. Do you think that we have a truly free and fair media in the United States?
Not really, because I consider it. I mean, you take a station like Fox. I mean, it just works for the Republican Party and works for the president, and they promoted the war and all their propaganda. It's ironic that PBS has given me a fairer shake than the so-called private stations. Of course, I wouldn't vote.
And even C-SPAN.
Oh, yeah. C-SPAN treats me very well, and they get me on. But it's sort of ironic. I wouldn't vote for a penny to subsidize public broadcasting. But in a way, it's more fair and balanced than the so-called fair and balanced station of Fox. But Fox has a right to do that, and somebody else has a right to be more liberal. So I don't want to, take that away. But the people don't quite recognize that. They're more likely to say PBS is unfair and it's always leftist, and finally we have Fox to balance this, and they love Fox News.
Yeah. Okay, I want to thank you for being here. This was
great
just
to be with you.
An incredible interview. Is there anything that you would like to say at the end here?
Well, I don't have anything real special, but I think most people have to realize that the real cause is to fight for the cause of liberty, because I think when we have a free society, individuals then can do what they want, take care of themselves, and work for their own virtue and excellence, and take that out of the role of government. It's when you give that responsibility to government to make this economy fair and make you a better person and tell you how you should be virtuous and all these things. The government can only do that, or pretend to do it, at the expense of liberty. And then when they make this attempt to make this perfect world, it doesn't work. So there's a very practical argument against all this big government, and it's a shame that we who believe in freedom and liberty have done such a lousy job in convincing the people that it's in their best interest to fight for liberty, and we will have our prosperity. Too often people say, well, we'll get our prosperity by getting our entitlements and giving up on the concept of liberty, and that's a problem that we have to overcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. That was so good that I've forgotten what the next questions were.